Hello, David here at merchantaccounts.ca. Today I'm going to tackle a little bit of a more complicated topic. How to prevent cross-border fees from occurring when processing credit card transactions. Now, this requires an understanding of what cross-border fees are. Now, these are fees that are assessed by Visa and Mastercard whenever a transaction crosses a border. And I want to be clear, it's not charged by the payment processor or initiated by the payment processor. The payment processor incurs the cost and they can either choose to absorb it or pass it on to the merchant. And in some cases, I'll get into this a little bit later, if a merchant is a larger merchant, has a lower rate, the processor can't absorb it because they'll be at a loss on the transaction. So as a merchant, it's very common to have cross-border fees, and unfortunately, it's not very common to understand why. I'm going to try and tackle, demystify that as much as I can today. So for clarity, when I said a second ago a processor may not pass it on, you'll know if you're on flat pricing. If you are on flat pricing, it means that the discount rate that you pay, it never fluctuates. It doesn't go all over the place, which is a great pricing model. I love flat pricing. The problem with flat pricing is interchange, which means cost from Visa and MasterCard to the payment processor. It fluctuates. If you have like a really basic credit card, if you're a college student, you got your first credit card ever, you're all excited. That's a different credit card than Richard Branson is going to walk around with in his wallet. So that's my way of saying rewards cards have a higher interchange cost than basic cards. And so the concept of flat pricing is, okay, Mr. Merchant, we're going to charge you 3%. We don't care what type of card you process. We're just going to eat it. If the interchange cost goes up, we're going to absorb that cost. Now, on the flip side, it means that if you process a lot of basic cards, or especially debit cards, it means your interchange costs are going to be quite a bit lower, and you're not going to see the savings. So, and now I'm getting way too far into the topic of interchange pricing versus flat pricing. But in general, these are fees charged by Visa and MasterCard. They're assessed by Visa and MasterCard, I should say, to the processor and are passed on to merchants. So with that in mind, let's kick it off here. So I think the best and most logical place to start is to explain, when do cross-border fees apply? When a credit card transaction is processed, they look at two things. Visa and MasterCard look at two things. Issue one, or item one, where is your business domiciled? So when you filled out your application to get a merchant account, you had to put the registered address for your company. Whatever country that is, that's where your business is going to be domiciled. So if you're a Canadian merchant, or if you're a Canadian domiciled merchant, you're Canadian. If you have a US-based business, you're American. If you're in Europe's a little bit different. It's looked at intra-regionally. So if you're in Europe, you're going to be considered a European merchant. Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, so on and so forth. But the point that I'm making is the location of your business is going to determine one of the two criteria. You don't have a lot of flexibility with that. You're based where you're based. To a degree, I'll get to that later. Okay, and the second thing that they look at is, where is the cardholder based? And I'm going to be a little more specific. It's not where the cardholder is physically located. It's, where is the bank that issued the credit card to this cardholder? Where is that bank based? Once they know these two things, your business is, say, in Canada, the bank is, say, Wells Fargo in Rhode Island. It's like, hold on, that crossed the border. Time to assess some fees. That's how cross-border fees occur. Now, in terms of the cost, the cross-border fee cost depends on the currency being charged to the cardholder. And it's not complicated. I just don't want to explain it wrong. So if you're, for this example, I'm going to pretend it's a Canadian merchant selling to an American cardholder. So it's crossing the Canadian-US border. So in this example, let's just pretend we're charging an American cardholder in US dollars. Okay. So the first thing that happens is obviously the cross-border fee is going to apply. Then they look at what currency was charged to this cardholder. Specifically, if you charge a foreign cardholder in the cardholder's local currency, the cross-border fee is 0.8%. So in this example, if it's a Canadian merchant, but they actually are doing the charge in US dollars, it means that this American cardholder is going to receive a charge to their card, a cross-border transaction, in the cardholder's local currency. That will make your cross-border fee be 0.8%. Now, if it wasn't in the cardholder's local currency, the fee is cut in half. So let's just same example, but the merchant billed that American customer in Canadian dollars. Well, that's not the local currency that the customer's card was issued in, so the cross-border fee is cut in half to 0.4%. If you ask me why, I actually don't know the reason why the fee is different depending on the payment currency. If someone knows, put it in the comments. It would be great. I still learn things every day. I've been doing this 18 years. So there's a little bit more news in regards to costs as well. On November 3rd, 2018, Mastercard is increasing the cross-border fee. They're increasing it by 0.2%. So previously for Mastercard, the cross-border fee I just explained was either 0.8% or 0.4%. Well, they're both being increased. So as of November 3rd, 2018, the cross-border fee will go to 1% instead of 0.8%. And it will go up to 0.6% from 0.4%. Boy, I hope I feel like I did a poor job of explaining that. But anyways, take the old costs and add on an additional 0.2%. MasterCard has increased the fee by 0.2% on cross-border transactions. Now, they've also lowered interchange on some of the more expensive rewards type cards, so it might actually work out in the merchant's favor, or it definitely will work out in some merchants' favor to a degree that's going to depend on the amount of international e-commerce that you do. Visa is also following suit, but it's not happening this year. So there will be some changes to the Visa International. So Visa calls it, I believe, their International Service Acquirer fee. It's all the same thing. It's just Visa's version of the same thing MasterCard does. And theirs is going up, but it's not going to happen until 2019. Give me some good news. All right, I think I can do that. There are ways to cut down on cross-border fees by, not shockingly, making sure it doesn't cross a border. How do you do that? You get a domestic merchant account in each country where you have a lot of customers. This is a headache. It means incorporating down there. It means dealing with a tax return. You probably are going to need an employee in that territory. It's a hassle. At merchantaccounts.ca, we do quite a lot of consulting. We have a lot of expertise in international interchange optimization. It's where we sit down with clients. I often sit down with clients and say, so hit me with it. Where are your customers based? What regions are you growing in? And we map it out. If let's just say you have a 3-region merchant. They do $1 million a month in the US, $500,000 a month in Canada, and $20,000 worth of sales a month in the UK. Well, in that situation, I would probably say to them, like 0.8% of $1 million is a lot. 0.8% of even $500,000 is a lot. 0.8%, that cross-border fee on your $20,000 of UK sales, is that going to grow soon? Because if not, why don't you start with 2 merchant accounts? Get one in the US domestically, one in Canada domestically, and obviously at merchantaccounts.ca, that's what we can do. We can help you with that. And leave the UK for now. I'm going to help you set up to charge those UK customers in pound sterling, but you'll just have to absorb that cross-border fee on that small amount of UK business that you do. That would be, I'm making up a fictitious example here. Now there's one more example, and boy, I apologize for making this complicated. I don't think it's actually my fault, it's just the rules. So there are cross-border acquiring exemptions. They are, there's a couple of them. First of all, there's a global acquiring exemption for airlines. If your airline flies into a region, you can get a domestic merchant account within that region for customers flying out of that region. So that's one option. That's not going to apply to most of people out there. So there is another little known exemption. It is between the US and Canada. It allows for a US merchant to provide a US domestic merchant account to a Canadian business without that business needing to incorporate in the States. And I'm just going to be clear on this point. When you apply for a merchant account, you need to have a local business in the country that you are applying for a merchant account in. I'm Canadian. Merchantaccounts.ca, mostly we deal with Canadian, US, and European clients. Let's just say customer from Australia calls me, hey Dave, we're hitting it big in Canada. Can you get me a Canadian merchant account? I would have to respond, I would love to. But you need to incorporate a presence here because under Visa and Mastercard rules, you can't get a domestic merchant account in Canada with a Canadian acquiring bank / processor unless you have a business presence here. So with that understanding, coming back to between Canada and the US, that's the only exception to that rule worldwide that I'm aware of anyways. So if you're a Canadian merchant, you can get a domestic US merchant account without an American business presence, and vice versa. If you're an American merchant, you want to sell to Canadian merchants, get a domestic Canadian merchant ID, you can do it. You don't need to incorporate in Canada. The challenge though, well, there's a couple challenges. First of all, very few banks or processors are aware of this exemption. Very few people use it. They don't really know how to use it. And there's a rule as well. So I'll just explain it through an example. If you are a Canadian domicile business and you get that US domestic merchant account under the exemption, you can only process US issued cards through that merchant account. That is the rule under the Visa guideline. So you couldn't get that merchant account in the US for US dollars and then charge customers from around the world. You can only charge to cards issued within the United States through that merchant account, which wouldn't be too hard to do. You would just probably on your checkout page, if the billing address the customer types in is not the United States, then you can't allow the transaction to go through. You would just route it back up to your Canadian merchant account. I have tried to make this not too confusing. I may have failed. I apologize. It's kind of a confusing topic, but I hope I've demystified it a little bit. So I do a lot of consulting in this area. Go to merchantaccounts.ca. If you do have questions about cross-border transactions, reach out to us. You can ask for me directly. I do a lot of the complex stuff personally. And I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.